The organ music swelled, a sound that was supposed to be joyful, but for me, it was just the soundtrack to my humiliation. I stood at the back of the church, alone. The aisle stretched out before me like a runway, and the one spot beside me, the place where my father was supposed to stand, was painfully, obviously empty. He wasn't sick. He wasn't out of town. He was just gone. He had refused to walk me down the aisle. His excuse? My stepmother, Catherine, had convinced him that I was somehow trying to steal the spotlight from Chloe, my own stepsister, on my wedding day. I took a shaky breath, the murmur of the guests a low buzz in my ears. I could see the little flashes from cell phone cameras documenting every second of this public shaming. I had to plaster a smile on my face to play along with the story I'd have to invent later, that he was home with a sudden, terrible stomach bug. I had to protect his reputation, even now. I took the first step, all by myself. And then, as I passed the first row of pews, my phone vibrated in my hand. I risked a quick look down, a text message. It was from him. "We need to talk." Even in this moment, he couldn't just let me have this. His need to control the narrative had to be the very last thing I experienced before I said, "I do." Before we get into the whole story, do me a quick favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below to let me know where you're watching from. It's always incredible to see just how far these stories can reach. It all truly started when I was 17. My father, Robert Monroe, was a high-powered corporate attorney back then. He had a deep appreciation for appearances, for anything that looked polished and impressive on the surface. After my mom died, I think he was profoundly lonely. I tried my best to be enough for him, but a 17-year-old girl is no replacement for a wife. I was just a walking, talking reminder of the woman he had lost. He met Catherine at a fundraiser for some legal charity, one of those huge echoing events in a ballroom of a downtown hotel. I was his plus one, as always. I had to be. I was wearing a boring navy blue dress he had picked out, deeming it appropriate. Catherine, however, was in a different league entirely. She was flawless. She seemed to glow, draped in a liquid silver dress that rippled with light every time she moved. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe, sleek style that looked like it should be painful, but on her, it just screamed power. She wore a string of pearls. Her posture was perfect, like a queen scanning her subjects. She caught my father staring, and she gave him a smile. It was a smile that didn't touch her eyes. It was a smile of appraisal. He introduced me. "This is my daughter, Ava." Catherine's gaze drifted down to me. Her eyes performed a quick, dismissive scan, from my slightly frizzy hair all the way to my sensible flat shoes. There was no smile for me, just a single sharp nod. "Robert," she said, her full, undivided attention snapping right back to him. I just stood there, clutching a glass of lukewarm water, and in that moment, I might as well have been invisible. In less than 3 months, she had moved in, and her daughter, Chloe, came with her. Chloe was a year younger than me, a quiet, shy girl with big, perpetually nervous eyes. She was like a faint, pale shadow trailing in the wake of her mother's blindingly bright presence. Our house was transformed almost overnight. The old, comfortable furniture my mom had chosen was suddenly gone. In its place, Catherine installed stark white carpets and glass-top tables that showed every fingerprint. I was afraid to touch anything. The house stopped feeling like a home. It felt like a showroom. It was cold. Catherine herself was the picture of polished perfection. She never raised her voice, never had a single spot on her silk blouses, never had a hair out of place. But I quickly learned that just beneath that shiny veneer, there was a deep-seated kind of poison. I tried to make it work. I honestly did. "Hey, Chloe," I said one morning at breakfast, "do you want a ride to school?" Chloe looked up from her cereal, startled. "Oh, Chloe is taking the bus from now on, Ava." Catherine's voice sliced through the air as she glided into the kitchen. She was already dressed in a sharp business suit, a leather briefcase in her hand. She needs to learn to be independent. Oh, okay. I was just offering. Catherine turned her gaze to me, her eyes like chips of blue ice. That's very thoughtful of you, but Chloe and I have our own routines. Please try not to interfere. I was just trying to be nice. But in Catherine's world, my kindness was interference. It was like that with everything. Catherine never wanted a stepdaughter. She wanted another version of her own daughter. She wanted a second Chloe. Chloe was obedient. Chloe was easy to mold. Chloe was a cheerleader. Chloe got respectable, quiet B-minuses. Chloe wore the preppy brand name clothes Catherine bought for her. Chloe was the perfect daughter. I was the opposite. I was into coding. I blasted alternative rock from my bedroom. I got A+ in physics and a C- in home ec. I lived in my dad's old frayed college sweatshirts. I was the problem. The criticism started subtly. It was never a direct fight, never a yelling match. It was always a quiet word from my father, delivered after Catherine had had a private chat with him. "Ava," he'd say, his eyes fixed on my ripped jeans, "don't you have anything a little more put together? Catherine is having some friends over. They're just jeans, Dad." Catherine feels it sends the wrong message. Just try to make an effort, okay? Then it shifted to my grades. "Ava, Catherine, and I were just looking at your report card. I got all A's," I said, confused. "Yes, but you got a C in public speaking. Catherine thinks it's because you come across as too argumentative. She says it's not very ladylike. It's the debate team, Dad. The whole point is to argue." He would let out this heavy, tired sigh, the sigh of disappointment. You know what she means, Ava. You're always pushing back, always challenging things. Why can't you be more like Chloe? She's so agreeable. Agreeable. I came to hate that word. Chloe was practically a ghost in her own house, and that was considered a good thing. Every one of those small digs, each little comparison, was another brick in the wall he was building between us. I could feel him pulling away from me. He stopped asking me about my day and started asking Catherine about my day instead. How was Ava today? He'd ask his new wife, and Catherine would sigh, perfectly mimicking his own weariness. "Oh, Robert, she's just so much. She's so intense." I tried to talk to her about her outfit again, and she just completely shut me out. I was sitting right there at the dinner table with them. "Ava," my dad would say, his tone pleading, "your stepmother is trying. Why do you have to make everything so hard?" "I'm not," I'd whisper, my voice barely audible. "See?" Catherine would say, her voice dripping with fake sadness. "She's closing me out. I just don't know what to do with her." He'd reach across the table and pat Catherine's hand. Never mine. I'd finish my dinner in silence, go up to my room, and lock the door. I'd lie on my bed, listening to the muffled sound of their laughter floating up from downstairs. The bond I had with my father didn't just break. It was a slow, agonizing erosion. Catherine was like water dripping on a stone, relentless, patient, and constant. She just dripped and dripped and dripped until the connection my dad and I once shared was worn down to almost nothing. He was a good man, I think, but he was also weak. He wanted a quiet life. He wanted a beautiful, perfect wife who would tell him he was always doing the right thing. Catherine gave him that, and the price for his quiet life was me. The real venom started to come out when Catherine thought I wasn't listening. She played a long game. She planted seeds, tiny, dark little seeds of doubt. "She's jealous of Chloe, Robert," I heard her say one night, her voice a low murmur from their bedroom. I was just walking past on my way to the bathroom. I froze, hearing my name. "What are you talking about?" my father asked. He sounded exhausted. "It's so obvious. Chloe is so popular and easygoing. Ava resents it. She's incredibly competitive. You saw how she acted when Chloe was voted homecoming queen. I hadn't acted any particular way. I'd mumbled congratulations. I couldn't have cared less about the homecoming court. I think Ava is just focused on her schoolwork, my dad offered, a weak defense. No, Robert. Catherine's voice turned sharp like the edge of broken glass. It's deeper than that. She's manipulating you. She makes you feel guilty so you'll pay attention to her instead of Chloe. She likes being the problem. It's how she gets what she wants. I don't know, Catherine. Trust me, she whispered. I know girls like her. She needs a firmer hand. You're way too soft on her. It's not doing her any favors. I stood there in the dark hallway, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. She was creating a monster, twisting my personality into this caricature of a spoiled, jealous, conniving brat. I ran back to my room, forgetting all about the bathroom. I shut the door, locked it, and turned my music up as loud as it would go, but I couldn't drown out her words. She's manipulating you. That night, my father didn't knock on my door. Ever since my mom died, he had this ritual. He'd knock, crack the door open just a bit, and say, "Good night, Avie, sleep tight." It was small. It was simple. It was the very last thread connecting me to the man he used to be. That night, the knock never came. I stared at my door until 2 a.m, just waiting. I told myself he was just tired, that he forgot, but he didn't forget the next night. Or the night after that. Catherine's words had hit their target. He was pulling away, establishing his firmer hand. A week later was my state debate tournament finals. It was a huge deal for me. I'd been talking about it for weeks. "Don't forget, Dad, Friday night, 7 p.m, I'll be there, Avie." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he'd said, his eyes glued to his laptop. That Friday night, I stood at the podium. The stage lights were hot. I scanned the auditorium, searching the crowd for his face. I saw Catherine and Chloe in the 3rd row. Chloe gave me a small, nervous little wave. Catherine was studying the program, a bored look on her face. But the seat next to them, the one I had saved for my father, was empty. I delivered my final arguments. My voice didn't shake. I stared at that empty chair and I argued. I argued about justice and fairness. I meant every single word. When I got home, the house was dark except for the blue glow of the TV. He was asleep on the sofa, an empty glass on the end table beside him. "Dad?" He woke with a start. "Ava, what time is it? It's late. You missed it." He blinked, looking confused. "Missed what?" "My debate, the finals." His face fell. It was a genuine look of, oh my God, he had actually forgotten. "Ava, I am so..." Catherine said it was next Friday. She had it on the calendar for next week. The blood drained from my face. "She lied to you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What? Don't be so dramatic." It was an honest mistake, Ava. She felt terrible about it. "She was there, Dad. She was in the audience. She sat right next to your empty seat." He just stared at me, speechless. He was caught. She must have been, I don't know. "I'm sorry, Ava. We'll celebrate tomorrow." "I don't want to celebrate," I said. I turned and walked away from him, toward my room. The final wall went up at my high school graduation. He was there. He sat with Catherine, but he wasn't there. When they called my name, Ava Monroe, with highest honors, I heard Chloe cheer. I heard a few claps from my dad's section, but he didn't stand up. He didn't whistle. When I found them outside after the ceremony, he gave me a hug. It was stiff, mechanical. "Well done, Ava." "Thanks, Dad." Catherine offered her plastic smile. "Congratulations, Ava. Now the real work begins. College is a privilege, you know. We trust you'll be grateful for it." Grateful. There was that word again. I was supposed to be grateful that they were finally getting rid of me. He had paid my tuition, but it felt less like a gift and more like a severance package. It felt like he was paying me to go away. As I packed my bags for college in Chicago, I was filled with a strange mix of terror and profound relief. I was leaving the only home I'd ever known, but it hadn't felt like my home for a very long time. On the day I left, my father carried my heaviest suitcases to the car. He seemed genuinely sad. Maybe he was finally feeling it. Maybe he was realizing he was losing me for good. "You'll call?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Yeah, Dad, I'll call." Catherine came out of the house. She wasn't smiling. She looked at me with her cold, appraising eyes. She gave me a dry, bony hug. "Don't forget where you came from," she whispered in my ear. It wasn't a kind reminder. It was a warning. It meant, don't you dare get too big for your britches. Don't you dare be happy because I control him. I won, and no matter where you go, you will always be the girl I turned you into. I got in the car. I didn't look back. The dorm room was a tiny concrete box that smelled of stale bleach and old dust. The mattress was a thin slab of foam covered in crackly plastic. My roommate wasn't scheduled to arrive until the next day. I was completely, terrifyingly alone. I sat on the hard wooden desk chair and just took a breath. The drive had taken 6 hours. My back ached and my eyes were dry. I had been holding back tears since the moment I pulled out of the driveway. Now, in the sterile silence of this ugly little room, I finally let them fall. I cried for the dad who had taught me how to ride a bike, the one who held me tight after my mom's funeral. I cried for the man who had disappeared right in front of me. I cried for my mom. I wished she were here. She would have seen right through Catherine. She would have protected me. After an hour or so, I had no more tears left. I was just an empty shell in an empty room. I had to do something. I had to unpack. I opened my largest suitcase, the one my dad had carried to the car. It was filled with my messily folded clothes, but tucked into the side, hidden under a stack of sweatshirts, was a small square box wrapped in dark blue velvet. I hadn't packed this. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out. It was old. The velvet was worn smooth at the corners. I opened it. Inside, resting on a bed of faded white satin, was my mother's locket. It was silver, oval-shaped, with a tiny swirling L engraved on the front. Not for Ava, for Laura, my mother. I thought Catherine had gotten rid of this. After she moved in, many of my mom's personal belongings had just disappeared. Catherine called it decluttering. I thought the locket was one of the casualties. I had looked for it for years. My heart hammered against my ribs. I picked it up. It felt heavy, real. I opened it. On one side, a tiny faded photo of my mom, young and smiling, her hair a wild mane. On the other, a picture of my dad from before he met Catherine. He was laughing. They looked so impossibly happy. Tucked underneath the locket was a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a greeting card. It was a sheet from his personal office stationery. Robert Monroe, attorney at law. His handwriting was a familiar, messy scrawl. Rushed. I unfolded it. Avi. I found this in my old desk drawer. I know I should have given it to you years ago. I'm sorry. Your mom would be so proud of you. I am proud of you. Don't let anyone put out your fire, not even me. Love, Dad. I read it once. Then I read it again, and a third time. Don't let anyone put out your fire, not even me. He knew. He knew what was happening. He knew he was part of it. He knew he was helping to smother my light. This note, it wasn't a magic wand. It wasn't an apology that could erase the last few years of pain. It didn't make up for the missed debate or the nightly silence. But it was something. It was a crack in the wall he'd built. It was a sign that the man I remembered was still in there somewhere, buried, weak, but still there. He was a coward. He couldn't say these things to my face. He couldn't stand up to his wife. He had to sneak this into my suitcase like some kind of spy. But he had done it. He had remembered my mom. He had remembered me. I clutched the locket so tightly the edges dug into my palm. I fastened the chain around my neck, the cool metal a shock against my skin. I looked around the empty, ugly dorm room. It was still a concrete box. I was still alone, but something fundamental had shifted inside me. Catherine's parting words were a threat. Don't forget where you came from. She wanted me to remember being small, to remember being the problem. But this locket, this note, they made me remember something else entirely. I came from my mother, a strong, vibrant woman with wild hair. I came from my father, a man who, despite his profound weakness, still knew the difference between light and darkness. I wasn't just Catherine's problem. I carefully placed the note in my wallet and tucked the locket under my shirt, feeling its reassuring weight against my chest. I stood up and looked at the empty room again. This wasn't an end. This was a beginning. I thought about my wedding day, years in the future. I had always pictured my dad walking me down the aisle. A new thought entered my mind, cold and sharp and clear. What if he's not there? What if you have to walk alone? The thought was terrifying, but the locket against my skin was warm now. I whispered it to the empty room, to myself. If you have to stand alone, stand tallest. It wasn't a plan, it was a promise, a mantra. I would stand tallest. I finished unpacking. I made the bed. I arranged my books on the small shelf, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a survivor. College was grueling, it was gritty, it was lonely, and it was the first time in my entire life that I felt truly free. I majored in architecture. Architecture? My dad had said on the phone, his voice laced with confusion. Avi, that's an awful lot of math. It's a very male-dominated field. Are you sure you wouldn't be happier with, art history? I could hear Catherine's voice echoing in his. Impractical for a young woman. I'm sure, Dad, I said, the locket a heavy anchor under my shirt. Well, okay, just be realistic. Realistic was his new favorite word. It meant be small. I wasn't small anymore. I poured everything I had into my work. I poured all the hurt, all the anger, all the years of being silenced into my blueprints. While other students were at frat parties, I was in the design studio. I sketched at 3 a.m, my hands stained with charcoal and graphite. I built intricate models out of foam, core, and glue. If Catherine had built a wall between me and my father, then I would build entire buildings. I would build things that were solid, things that were real, things that couldn't be whispered away into nothing. I waited tables to pay for my expensive supplies. I worked shifts at the campus library. I was perpetually exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired. It was the exhaustion that comes from building something up, not from being torn down. My phone calls home were brief and stilted. How's school, Ava? It's good, Dad. Busy. That's good. Catherine says hello. Chloe just got accepted to her first choice sorority. Tell her congrats. Always. Catherine says, never, I think, or I feel. I stopped expecting more. I stopped waiting for the knock on the door that would never come. I focused on my work. In my 3rd year, I took a senior seminar with Professor Evelyn Reed. She was a retired architect, a living legend in the field, and she was absolutely terrifying. She dressed exclusively in black, had a sharp silver bob, and had zero tolerance for excuses. She tore my first project to shreds. This is timid, she said, tapping her pen on my drawing. Your line work is clean, but your concept is derivative. It's boring. It's polite. She looked at me with piercing, intelligent eyes. You're hiding. Why? I was flabbergasted. No one had ever accused me of being polite. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do, she said flatly. You have talent. I can see it. But you're afraid to take up space. This design is apologizing for its own existence. Stop apologizing. Come back next week and bring me something with guts. She was right. I was still that girl cowering in the hallway. I was still trying to make myself small. That week, I barely slept. I started from scratch. I threw out the polite, apologetic design. I designed a building that was audacious. It was all glass and exposed steel in sharp, uncompromising angles. It was a building that screamed, I am here. I presented it to her. She studied it for a long, silent moment. Well? I finally asked, my voice trembling. She looked up at me, and a slow, tiny smile spread across her face. There you are. I was wondering when you were going to show up. Evelyn became my mentor. She was the mother I had lost and the father I had wished for. She was tough, she was honest, and she never once pitied me. "The world doesn't care about your sob story, Monroe," she told me over coffee one day. "It only cares about what you build, so go build something." She helped me land a coveted internship at a major firm in downtown Chicago. Chicago was even lonelier than my dorm room. I was the intern. I fetched coffee, I made photocopies, I lived in a shoebox apartment with 2 other girls and survived on ramen noodles. I struggled. I was broke. I missed my dad, the old one. One night I broke down and called him, just bone-weary and defeated. "Hey, Dad, Ava, is everything okay?" "Yeah, just..." "Chicago is tough. The internship is..." "Listen, Avi," he cut me off. "Catherine and I are just about to sit down to dinner. Is this important?" I froze. My throat constricted. "No," I said quietly. "It's not important." "Okay then, talk to you soon. We're proud of you." He hung up. I sat there in my tiny, dark apartment staring at the silent phone. "We're proud of you." It sounded like nothing, a line he was programmed to say. I pulled the locket out from under my shirt and looked at my mother's smiling face. "If you have to stand alone, stand tallest." I hung up my coat, sat down at my makeshift desk, and got back to work. I didn't just survive that internship, I dominated it. I was the first person in the office every morning and the last one to leave at night. I absorbed everything. I watched everyone. When I graduated, they offered me a full-time position. For 5 years, I worked. I saved every single dollar I could. I built my portfolio. I built my reputation. At 29, I quit. I took every cent of my savings, rented a tiny office space with a leaky roof, and launched my own firm. I called it Keystone Architecture, a nod to the foundational stone, a line drawn from my very core. The first year, I nearly went bankrupt. The second year, I broke even. The third year, I hired my first employee. By the time I was 35, I owned the building, a 3-story historic brick landmark downtown. The girl Catherine had called ungrateful and difficult, the girl my father had called impractical, I was rebuilding the city's skyline. I had a team. I had clients who respected my vision. I had a life I had built with my own 2 hands, from the foundation up. I hadn't seen my father in nearly 3 years. I hadn't been back to my hometown. I didn't need to. I had finally built a home of my own. I was 35 years old. I was not a girl. I was a woman, an architect, a founder. My days were packed with purpose. I'd walk through my bustling office, the one I owned, and my team would look to me for answers. I gave them. I was strong. I was in control. My life was a structure of my own design, and the foundation was solid rock. Then, one Tuesday, my phone buzzed. I was in my office reviewing blueprints for a new city library, my coffee long since gone cold. I glanced at the screen. The name read, Dad. My heart did a strange, painful lurch. I hadn't seen that name pop up on my phone I couldn't even remember, a year? 2? We exchanged a perfunctory text on Christmas. Merry Christmas. You too. That was the extent of it. I opened the message. My hands were perfectly steady. Chloe's wedding is next month. She'd love for you to be there. That was all. Beneath it was a link to a digital invitation with the date and the church. I stared at the words. She'd love for you to be there. Not, I'd love for you to be there. Not, we miss you. Not, I want to see my daughter. He was using Chloe as a shield, just as he always had. She was the good, agreeable daughter. There was no apology, no warmth. After years of near total silence, this was what I got. A summons, an obligation. My first impulse was to delete it, to just press my thumb to the screen and make the whole thing vanish. Why should I go? What could they possibly want from me? My life was here. My work was here. I had meetings, deadlines, a life that had absolutely no space left for them. I didn't need them. I had worked so damn hard to not need them. I closed my eyes. I thought about my wedding day, the empty aisle, the text message that read, "We need to talk." The way he had made my most important day about his own drama. And here he was, at it again, hijacking my ordinary Tuesday with his cold, detached text. I should have deleted it. I should have gone back to my library blueprints. But I didn't. I just kept staring at the screen, because deep down, inside the 35-year-old architect, there was still another person. There was a 17-year-old girl, a girl who had waited for a good-night knock that never came, a girl who had stood on a stage and delivered a speech to an empty chair. That girl was still in there, and she was weak. She still craved her father's love. She still wanted him to look at her just once and say, "I see you, I'm proud of you." I thought about Chloe, quiet, nervous Chloe. In her own timid way, she had always been kind to me. She was a victim of Catherine, too. Maybe the invitation really was from her. Maybe she was the one who had asked my father to reach out. I stood up and walked to my office window, looking down at the city below. My city, the one I was helping to shape. I called Evelyn, my mentor, the one person who knew the whole ugly story. "I got an invitation," I said, skipping the hello. "Oh?" Her voice was sharp. "From who?" "My father. My stepsister is getting married." A long silence stretched over the line. Evelyn never wasted a single word. "Are you going?" she finally asked. "I don't know." "Why would you go, Ava? What are you hoping to find there?" I was honest. I don't know. Closure? Or maybe I just want them to see me. I want them to see that I'm not the problem child anymore. I'm not the girl they sent away. "Be careful, Monroe," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Old habits die hard. Theirs and yours. Don't go there expecting to find something that was never there to begin with." "I know," I said, but I didn't. "If you go," she added, "go for yourself, not for him." We hung up. I stood at that window for another 10 minutes. Go for yourself. What did that even mean? It meant I would not go as the victim. I would not go as the difficult daughter. I would go as Ava Monroe, founder of Keystone Architecture. I opened my laptop. I booked a flight. I booked a rental car. And I booked a suite at the nicest hotel in my old hometown. Not at their house. A cold, sick dread pooled in my stomach, but I did it anyway. I spent the next 2 weeks working myself into a state of numbness. I didn't want to think about it. Then the day arrived. I packed my bag. I didn't pack the old, comfortable clothes I used to live in. I packed my best suit, a dark navy, custom-tailored power suit. It was my armor. The flight was short. The rental car was a big black SUV that made me feel powerful. I drove through my old town. It looked smaller now. The streets were tidy, the trees were ancient, but it all felt like a movie set. It didn't feel real. Then I pulled up to the church, the same one from my childhood, the same one where my mother's funeral was held. It had massive stained glass windows and heavy, dark oak doors. A flood of memories washed over me in a little black dress, clutching my father's hand, me in a debate blazer staring at his empty seat. I parked the car and sat there for a full minute, my heart pounding against my ribs. I reached under my blouse and my fingers found the locket, my mother's locket. If you have to stand alone, stand tallest. I took a deep breath. I got out of the car. I slid on my sunglasses. I was a visitor, a guest. I walked up the stone steps and pushed through the heavy doors. The organ was playing and the church was packed. I saw them in the front pew. Catherine spotted me first. Her head turned. She was wearing a pale green dress, her hair immaculate. Her face was a mask of polite surprise that quickly tightened. She assessed my suit, my hair, my expensive shoes. A brittle, forced smile touched her lips. "Ava," she mouthed, looking more annoyed than anything else, like I was an unexpected guest who had shown up late to her party. Then Chloe saw me. Her face lit up with a genuine, unadulterated smile. She let go of her new husband's arm and practically ran over to me. She threw her arms around me in a real hug. "Ava! Oh my God, you came! You really came! Thank you, thank you!" She was crying. "Of course, Chloe. You look absolutely beautiful," I said, and she did. Then, behind her, my father turned. He looked older. His hair was almost completely gray, his shoulders slumped. He looked perpetually tired. He just stared at me. Chloe pulled away. "Look, Dad, Ava's here." He walked toward me slowly. His eyes were watery. He was looking at me like I was a ghost. "Hello, Ava," he said, his voice rough. "Hello, Dad." He didn't hug me. He didn't smile. He just nodded, his eyes filled with a strange, unreadable sorrow. And the little girl inside me, the one who had secretly harbored a flicker of hope, felt her heart sink into her stomach. Nothing had changed. I had flown across the country, built an empire, and suited up in armor. And he still looked at me like I was a complete stranger. The reception was held at a new, high-end venue just outside of town called the Riverbend Gallery. It was all restored brick, massive wooden beams, and a sweeping wall of glass overlooking the river. It was gorgeous, and it was exactly the kind of place Catherine would choose. It was tasteful, her favorite word. The decor was all white roses, silver tablecloths, and glass. So much cold, unforgiving glass. It was a beautiful, expensive, sterile box. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Waiters in tuxedos glided through the room. There were hundreds of people there, people I didn't know, and old family friends who looked right through me, their eyes skimming past me to smile warmly at Robert and Catherine. I was just a shadow. I found my place card, Table 14, Friends of the Family. It was in the very back, near the swinging doors to the kitchen. Of course it was. I sat down alone, ordered a club soda, and I watched. I watched Catherine holding court. She was the queen of this castle, her hand resting possessively on her husband's arm. She moved through the room, accepting compliments on the wedding, the venue, her dress. She was in perfect, absolute control. This wasn't Chloe's night. It was hers. I watched my father play his part. He laughed at the right times. He shook hands. He looked proud. He looked happy. He would glance over at Catherine, and his smile would widen. He was the perfect accessory. He never once looked in my direction. I watched Chloe. She looked radiant, but also terrified. She clung to her new husband's hand like it was a life raft. Every time she laughed, her eyes would dart toward her mother, as if seeking approval. It was a perfect, polished, poisonous performance. I felt nothing, just a deep, profound weariness. I just wanted to go back to my hotel room. Then, the clinking of a glass, a fork against a champagne flute. If I could have everyone's attention, someone announced, it was time for the toasts. The best man told a clumsy story. The maid of honor cried, and then Catherine stood up. She walked to the microphone, and the room fell completely silent. She tapped the mic, a small, perfect tap, tap. "Hello, everyone," she said, her voice as smooth as silk. "For those of you who don't know me, I'm Catherine Monroe, Chloe's very, very proud mother." She beamed. The crowd murmured its approval. She gave a beautiful, polished speech about a mother's love, about how wonderful Chloe's new husband was, about the importance of family. "Robert and I," she said, placing a hand on my father's shoulder, "we have worked so hard to build a strong, supportive family. Because we believe that family isn't about blood." My head snapped up. I stared at her. She continued, her voice thick with manufactured emotion. "It's about loyalty." She let that word hang in the air for a moment. It's about knowing who you can count on. It's about showing up for each other, through thick and thin. As she said the word loyalty, her eyes swept across the room. They scanned the tables, and for one brief, chilling second, they locked with mine. It was not an accident. It was a direct hit, a public slap in the face. She was talking to me. She was telling me, and everyone in that room, that I was not loyal, that I was not family, that I was the one who didn't show up. I was the blood that didn't matter. The crowd ate it up. They applauded. So true, a woman at the next table whispered, dabbing her eye with a napkin. And my father, he was clapping. He was smiling, looking up at his wife with pure, unadulterated adoration. He didn't even see the knife she had just thrown. He didn't even feel it. A new feeling began to crystallize in my chest. It wasn't the hot, tearful rage of my youth. It was a cold, clear, structural anger. It was the anger of an architect who spots a fatal flaw in a building's design. She was a liar. This entire party, this entire family, was a lie. A beautiful, cold, empty building with a rotten foundation. They didn't invite me here to celebrate with them. They didn't invite me here to reconnect. They invited me here to be a witness, to be a prop, to be the problem child sitting in the back, forced to watch them win. They needed me here to prove how loyal their real family was by showing me what it looked like to be on the outside. I thought about my wedding day, the empty aisle. I thought about the empty chair at my debate tournament. I thought about the phone call. Is this important? I thought about the text. Chloe would love for you to come. A perfect, calm, quiet clarity settled over me. It was the same feeling I got right before a major client presentation. The moment I knew, without a doubt, that I was right. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I put down my club soda. I stood up. I didn't pick up a glass. I didn't have a speech prepared. I just stood. The chatter in the room was loud, and at first no one noticed me. I started walking. I walked from table 14, past table 10, past table 5. I walked right into the open space between the head table and the dance floor. A few people at the front tables saw me and stopped talking. A ripple of silence spread through the room. The string quartet trailed off, one violin at a time. The room became hushed. Catherine looked at me, her smile frozen in place. She was annoyed. I was interrupting her schedule. I was going off script. My father looked at me, his face a mask of panic. "Ava, what are you doing?" he mouthed, his expression mortified. I planted my feet. I didn't need a microphone. I had learned to project my voice in massive lecture halls. "A beautiful speech, Catherine," I said. My voice was calm, clear, and it carried across the entire silent room. But I think family is also about forgiveness. I looked at my father. He flinched and looked down at his plate. "Since we're all here tonight," I continued, my voice steady and strong, celebrating love and loyalty, "I have an announcement of my own to make." A buzz of anticipation went through the crowd. This was drama. Catherine's face shifted from annoyed to furious. I had hijacked her daughter's wedding. I didn't care. Evelyn's voice echoed in my head. "Take up space." I was about to take up all of it. I stood there in the center of that grand room, feeling every eye on me. I felt the weight of my mother's locket against my skin. It was warm. I was not 17. I was not the problem. I was the founder. "I'm not sure many of you here know who I am," I began, my gaze sweeping around the room, making eye contact. "I see a lot of new faces, and some old ones." I glanced at the tables of my parents' friends, who probably don't recognize me. I turned my attention back to the head table. "I'm Ava Monroe. I'm Robert's daughter." My father looked up, his face ashen. "I'm Chloe's stepsister." I let that hang in the air. "The other daughter, the one who left." "Catherine is right," I said, looking directly at her now. "Family is complicated. Loyalty is complicated. But so is the truth." Catherine's polite smile was completely gone. She looked like she was chewing on shards of glass. Chloe looked like she was about to burst into tears. "When I left this town for college," I said, "I was told I was impractical." I used the very word my father had used. "I was told I was difficult," I added, using Catherine's word. "I was told I was ungrateful. I was told I was aiming too high, that I needed to be more realistic." I took a deep breath. This was it. Well, I wanted to come back tonight, to this beautiful celebration, and share with all of you just how impractical I've been. I smiled, a real calm smile. "My name is Ava Monroe. I am the founder and principal architect of Keystone Architecture. There was a sharp gasp from a man at a front table, a city council member. He sat bolt upright. He knew the name. It had been in the local business journal. My firm, I continued, my voice gaining strength, we designed the new downtown arts center. More gasps. This was the largest, most celebrated public project the city had undertaken in decades. It was a massive, stunning, modern landmark. My father's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief. We also designed the new City Hall Annex, I said, and the Riverside Pavilion, the one that opened last spring. I wasn't boasting. I was simply stating facts, cold, hard, structural facts. I was building my case. Then I paused. I looked up at the high, restored wooden beams of the ceiling. I looked at the sweeping glass wall that overlooked the dark, glittering river. "And this venue?" I said, my voice dropping just a little. "This beautiful building, this riverbend gallery that we are all standing in tonight?" I brought my gaze back to the head table. I designed its restoration. And as of last year, I own it. Dead. Silence. The kind of silence that is so heavy you can feel its weight pressing down on you. Catherine's face, it wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't shock. It was just blank. A complete and total system failure. Her polished mask had shattered into a million pieces. In that single stark second, she looked small and old and utterly fake. My father. His hand was trembling so violently he had to put his champagne glass down on the table. His mouth was hanging open. He was staring at me, but I don't think he was seeing me. He was seeing the buildings. He was seeing the name in the newspaper. He was seeing the lie he had been living for 2 decades. My voice softened. I was no longer addressing the crowd. I was talking only to him. "I've been thinking a lot about my own wedding day," I said. The guests leaned in, hungry for the real story. I thought about who would walk me down the aisle. It's the one thing a girl thinks about. I looked directly into my father's eyes. They were brimming with tears, but it was far too late for tears. "You didn't walk me down my aisle," I said, the words echoing in the silent room. All the whispers about my wedding, about my father's sudden illness, it all clicked into place. The lie was exposed. "You refused," I said, stating the plain, simple truth. "Because my stepmother," I said, glancing at Catherine's frozen face, "told you I was stealing the spotlight." Catherine made a small, strangled noise. "Ava, this is not the place." "But I realized something tonight, Dad," I said, my voice clear and strong, pulling his attention back to me. "You may not have walked me down the aisle, but you should know. I walked myself all the way here." I looked around the room. My room, the one I had built, the one they were all sitting in. For a long, terrible moment, there was nothing but that stunned, absolute silence. Then one person started to clap. It wasn't a family friend. It was the city council member. He got to his feet. Then another person stood up, a woman I recognized from the bank, and then the whole room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a stunned, powerful, roaring ovation. They weren't clapping for the family drama. They were clapping for the arts center. They were clapping for the pavilion. They were clapping for the woman who had just, with quiet dignity, taken back every single thing that had been stolen from her. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just gave a single, small nod to the crowd, a quiet gesture of thanks. Then I turned. I did not go back to table 14. I walked straight out the side door into the cool night air. I needed to breathe. I stood on the terrace, a terrace I had designed. It was made of stone, with simple string lights overhead, overlooking the dark, quiet river. I gripped the railing, my knuckles white. I was just breathing. In, out. My heart was a jackhammer in my chest. I hadn't planned any of that, not a single word. It had just come out. the truth, after nearly 20 years of being suffocated, had just decided to speak. I heard the heavy door open behind me. I didn't need to turn around. I knew. Ava. It was my father's voice. It was shaking. I turned slowly. He was standing there, his expensive tuxedo jacket unbuttoned. He looked utterly broken, and 2 steps behind him, a constant shadow, was Catherine. Her face was a mask of cold stone. The fake smiles were gone. This was the real her, raw and furious. Ava, my father started again. He took a hesitant step toward me. I had no idea. He was stammering. The buildings, the arts center, city hall. Ava, I didn't know how much you'd accomplished. He looked at me, his expression desperate. I'm proud. I just stared at him. The word proud felt like a tiny pebble tossed into a chasm. It was too small, too late. Proud, I asked, my voice quiet, not angry, just hollow. Or surprised. Which one is it, Dad? I'm both, I guess. You just didn't know I finished for him, because you never asked. You never called. You never looked. That's not fair, Ava, Catherine snapped. Her voice was low and vicious. The queen was gone. This was the woman who had whispered poison in the hallway. We only ever wanted what was best for you. I turned my head to look at her, and for the first time in my adult life, I laughed in her face. It wasn't a happy sound, it was dry and empty. Best for me, I asked, or best for you? We gave you everything, Catherine hissed, taking a step forward, her hands clenched into fists. We paid for your college. You paid for me to leave. I cut her off, my voice turning hard as steel. You paid to get the problem out of your perfect white-carpeted house. You wanted me gone so you could have him all to yourself, so you could build your perfect, loyal family. How dare you, she whispered. No, I said, taking a step toward her. And for the first time in her life, Catherine took a step back. She actually flinched. How dare you, I said. You sat in the audience at my state debate finals. You sat right next to his empty chair. And then you went home and you lied to him. You told him it was the following week. My father's head whipped around. He stared at his wife. What? Catherine? Is that true? Catherine's face went bone white. She was caught. It was a mistake. A simple mix-up. It was never a mistake, I said, my eyes locked on Catherine's. It was a game, 1,000 little cuts, every single day. She's jealous of Chloe. She's manipulating you. She's ungrateful. You dripped poison into his ear for years. You did it until he couldn't even see me anymore, until he stopped saying goodnight. My father made a small, choked sound. He covered his mouth with his hand. He remembered. He knew it was true. I was never jealous of Chloe, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. I looked at the stone terrace floor. I liked Chloe. I was just a kid, a sad kid whose mom had just died, and you turned me into the enemy. Why? Because I wasn't yours? Because I was her daughter? I touched the locket, now on the outside of my suit jacket. Catherine was silent. Her silence was a confession. I turned back to my father. He was crying now, not loud, sobbing tears, but silent, awful, shaking ones. She told you I was jealous, I said to him, but I never wanted Chloe's spotlight. I never wanted any of this. My voice cracked, the little girl breaking through just for a second. I just wanted my dad. My father looked at me, his face a complete ruin of regret. Avie, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You were weak, I said, saying the word out loud. He couldn't deny it. He just nodded, his body slumping in shame. His silence was his final confession. It was the truth. He knew what she was doing. He knew. And he let it happen because it was easier. Catherine tried one last time, a desperate change in tactics. Ava. We can fix this, she said, her voice suddenly soft and cloying. Your father, he's missed you terribly. We can be a family. All of us. All of us. I looked at her. Then I looked at my father. He He was watching her, a strange, desperate hope dawning in his eyes. He wanted to believe her. He wanted the easy fix. And I knew, in that single awful moment, I knew that nothing had changed. He would always choose her. He would always choose the path of least resistance. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it was absolute. I looked at my father. "I forgive you, Dad." His head came up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "You do?" "Yes, and I meant it." I suddenly felt light. "I forgive you for being weak. I forgive you for choosing her. I forgive you for the empty chair, and I forgive you for the empty aisle." I took a deep breath of the cool night air, feeling it fill my lungs. But forgiveness isn't the same as access. His face fell. "What? What does that mean?" "It means I'm done," I said. "I'm not that 17-year-old girl anymore. I am not waiting by the door for you. I am done. I'm forgiving you so that I can be free, not so you can come back in." I looked at Catherine, whose face was now pure hatred. "You won," I said to her. "You got him. You can keep him." I turned. I walked away from them. "Ava, wait," my father called out, his voice a desperate, cracking cry. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked off the terrace, across the gravel drive, and to the parking lot. I got into my black SUV. As I pulled away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. I could see them. 2 small, dark figures standing under the bright lights of the building I built, alone, together. I flew back the next morning. I didn't wait for a call. I didn't go to say goodbye. When I landed, my phone was blown up with messages. Texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade. "Ava, oh my God." Voicemails from old family friends. I had no idea. That was incredible. "Please call me." And a string of texts from my father. "Ava, please call me. Please, we need to talk, properly." "I'm so sorry, Ava, please." I read them all, and then I turned my phone off. I went to my apartment. I took off the suit. I stood under a long, hot shower. I put on my old jeans and a sweatshirt. I made a pot of coffee. Then I went to my studio. It was quiet. It was Sunday. I sat at my drafting table, just breathing in the familiar, comforting smell of paper and graphite. This was real. My team, my work, my buildings, the rest of it. It felt like a bad dream. Evelyn stopped by that afternoon. She must have had a feeling. The local paper had already picked up the story. The business section was buzzing about the reveal at the Riverbend Gallery. So, she said, not knocking, just walking in with 2 cups of coffee. She perched on the edge of my drafting table. "You took up space." I took the coffee she offered. I guess I did. "How does it feel?" she asked. I thought for a long moment. "Quiet," I said. "It feels quiet. The noise in my head is finally gone." "Good," she said, a rare smile on her face. "That's the feeling of a job being finished." I left my phone off for 3 days. I worked, I drew, I slept. Then I turned it back on. I sent a text to my father. "I'm back in the city. I can meet for coffee. 1 hour. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The cafe on Main Street." I added one more line. "But just you, Dad. If you bring her, I'm leaving." He texted back in less than 10 seconds. "Thank you. Just me, I promise." I was there at 10 on the dot. He was already there, sitting at a small table in the back. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in a week. He stood up when he saw me. He looked small. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, Ava. Thank you. Thank you for coming." I sat. I ordered a black coffee. He just stared at me. "You look good, Avie," he said. "Successful?" "I am," I said. It wasn't a boast, it was a fact. The silence between us was heavy. He didn't know where to begin. I meant what I said," he finally stammered. "I'm proud. And I am so, so sorry." "I know," I said. "No," he said, leaning forward. "You don't. After you left, Catherine and we talked. A real talk. For the first time in our marriage." He looked down at his hands. I asked her about the debate tournament. "And?" I asked. She admitted it, he whispered. She said she was threatened by you, by my bond with you, by how much you were like Mom, I finished for him. He nodded. Yes. She thought she was protecting our new family by destroying what was left of the old one. So she destroyed me, I said. Yes, he deflated. I was a coward, Ava, plain and simple. It was just easier to let her be happy. It was quiet. And I told myself you were strong. You were resilient. You'd be okay. His voice broke. I used your own strength against you. It was the biggest mistake of my life. We sat in silence as the waitress brought my coffee. And then we talked. For the first time since I was 17, we actually talked. He asked about my work. Not just how is it, but he asked about specific projects, about my process, about the library. I told him. He listened. I asked him, "What are you going to do, Dad?" He sighed, looking out the window. "I don't know. Catherine, she's my wife. It's complicated." "I know," I said. I wasn't asking him to leave her. That was his choice to make, his life. I meant what I said at the wedding, Dad. I do forgive you. But the other part, he said, his eyes sad. Forgiveness isn't access. Does that mean this is it? This coffee? I don't know, I said. And it was the honest truth. It means I'm not that 17-year-old girl anymore. I'm not waiting by the door for you. It means we can't go back to who we were. I don't want to go back, he said quickly. I want to go forward, if you'll let me. I looked at him, at the man who taught me to ride a bike, the man who hid my mother's locket in my suitcase. We can try, I said, slowly. But the old rules are gone. Okay, he said, relief flooding his face. Okay, slowly. We finished our coffee. We got up to leave. He hugged me, and it wasn't the stiff, awkward hug from the church. It was a real hug, the hug of a father who knew he had almost lost everything. I hugged him back. Before I got in my car, he stopped me. Ava, one more thing. He pulled a small envelope from his jacket pocket. It's just a note. I took it. Thank you for the coffee, Dad. I drove back to my studio. The afternoon sun was streaming through the huge windows. I sat at my drafting table and opened the envelope. It was his messy, rushed handwriting. For your next blueprint, maybe something with a garden for us to sit in. A single tear rolled down my cheek. It wasn't a sad tear, it was just a tear. I looked at my desk, which was covered in blueprints for my newest project, a small, beautiful community arts center. I picked up my pencil. I looked at the sketch, at the way the sunlight was hitting the paper, illuminating the lines I'd drawn for the stained glass windows. The same light. I thought about the aisle, the empty space beside me. It wasn't empty anymore. I had filled it with buildings, with a company, with a life. I had filled it with myself. I whispered the old words, the words from the dark, cold dorm room. If you have to stand alone, stand tallest. I whispered it with gratitude this time, because the aisle might have been empty, but I was never truly alone. I touched the pencil to the paper, and I began to draw. End of story.